Our guests today are director Vika Evdokimenko and producer and casting director Timothy Evans. Now, Vika is a BAFTA-nominated British filmmaker with Jewish-Ukrainian roots who graduated from Cambridge University and attended NYU Grad School program where she was mentored by Rebecca Miller and Spike Lee. Now, Vika is a lecturer at the University of London and a member of the British Academy, and she is the founder of Anfan Terrible, I pray I said that right, a production company that aims to tell stories which inspire meaningful change. Now, Timothy Evans is a former film journalist turned casting director and producer, and since joining Anfan Terrible Productions as the in-house casting director, he has cast both I Don't Need Adult Conversation and the brand new short film Truth Serum. Now, Timothy also aims to make strides in the industry for disability representation as the first casting director with cerebral palsy. Now, their incredible comedic short film, Truth Serum, features an all-star British cast, including Richard Gadd from Baby Reindeer, Sophie Kennedy-Clarke from Nymphomaniac and the Danish Girl, and Olivia Vanal from Roadkill. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome director Vika Evdokimenko and producer and casting director Timothy Evans to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ward, for having us. It's really an
Oh, yeah.
honor. Thank you.
Cool. This is a real thrill. Thank you.
Well, you are very, very welcome. Now, I'm going to have to say it. I loved this short film, Truth Serum, very, very much. And for my audience, what is Truth Serum about?
So, Truth Serum tells the story of a housewarming party gone wrong when a mysterious drug infects a lot of the guests, unleashing unprecedented chaos as both ugly and beautiful truths start to emerge to challenge the relationships of a group of old friends.
Well, how did you come across the screenplay for Truth Serum?
So, full disclosure, the screenwriter is my husband. Uh, so it was easy. We came up with the concept together, and it's actually based or inspired, I suppose, by a song by Smog. So it's a Bill Callahan song called "Truth Serum," and we were driving in a car one day and singing along because it's got fabulous lyrics. And we were just like, this would make a great movie, or not this, not the specific episodes featured in the lyrics, but more, the themes and the atmosphere of chaos and absurdity. And that's what we try to translate onto the screen.
Yeah, I cannot imagine the brainstorming sessions that must have gone on over this script because thinking about Truth Serum, you could have thought of 1,000 different scenarios on which way to go with this. I'm very glad you picked comedy.
I think it's got to be comedy. If we're going to go to dark places, what better forum than comedy to do that?
Very much so. Now, Timothy, let me ask you this because you have an all-star cast in this film. I just mentioned Richard Gadd. There's Sophie Kennedy-Clarke and Olivia Vanal. What was the casting process like?
It was intense because not only do you have a really atypically large cast for a short film, you might think of people come up to me all the time and they'll say, oh, so short films, it's 2 or 3 people monologuing in a room. And it's like, no, there are 6 principal characters, I think 17 people in total. So yeah, it was intense, and especially intense given that was my first go at bat. But that's the challenge, isn't it? It was so exciting. It was almost a case of I had too many ideas. So the brainstorming sessions, I can tell you, they went on for hours. But we had
I can verify that.
Assembling this, and then you had the added complication as well of doing it at the tail end of the pandemic. So even when we had jigsaw pieces in place, all of a sudden, oh, we've lost our lead the day before the table read because he's got COVID. You got to recast it by 7:30 tonight. True
Oh my
story.
gosh. Well, I'm looking at this cast and it is a stellar cast in this short film. How did you cast Richard Gadd? Was this before he started doing Baby Reindeer or during?
This was so he had done Baby Reindeer, the one-man show at the Edinburgh Fringe, and had transferred to the Bush Theatre in London. Now, if you're a casting director, and even before, like I say, this was my first time, but all my life I've been an avid theatre goer. When I was living in London, I was going, maybe 5 times a week. So I have a lot of theatre friends who, between us, we sort of collectively see everything. And I had this friend who, she saw Baby Reindeer at the Bush. And by the time I was trying to get a ticket, it was so popular, you couldn't get it. I missed the show. And for the next year, she was saying, yeah, you saw this great show this year and that great show, but I really wish you'd seen Baby Reindeer. So Richard Gadd was on my mind for like a whole year before we even sat down to do this. And it's crazy to think he was the very first person that I put in the document when we were putting all the faces in. And, we got our first choice. We had to bang at that door repeatedly because he was actually writing the scripts for the Netflix show at the time. So there was a concern that, should he do this? Will he have the time to do it? And, you just had to be persistent. And luckily, persistence paid off. But it's incredible to have him as part of the ensemble.
Well, you mentioned that this is a fairly large cast for a short film. That was one of the things that I noticed. For both of you, what were the challenges that you had to overcome working with a large cast for a short film?
Why don't I start us off? I mean, so many, but purely because I think one of the core challenges was the length of the script, which I believe was 25 pages. And we had, I think, a 4-day shoot. So it was a pretty intense shoot with obviously a lot of actors to manage and a lot of actors that needed to go to quite extreme places. So I think scheduling was our first challenge and trying to just cover the story to the level and quality that we wanted. But because we had this great cast, actually, it was easier than I had imagined. We did have a whole day of rehearsal, a table read followed by, various rehearsal techniques, backstory improvs, all sorts of fun things that we had way ahead of the shoot. And I think that really helped. By the time we got to the shoot, to day one, I felt like the cast was really primed for playing each character, and they had already, pre-established relationships because, of course, they're playing friends, which, you need a believable on-screen chemistry for that. So that was what we were striving to create on a very tight schedule.
Go ahead, Timothy.
Oh, sorry. Right up until we went out to each of the actors, we would even do a script polish where I would, from a casting point of view, I would say to Ollie and Vika, like, look, let's work on this scene again. Like, let's try and make this sing even more. Let's make it pop. Let's make something come off the page that is going to make Richard, Olivia, Sophie, whoever is looking at that part, say, I really want to do this. So that was, it was, I think, just having all the answers on a script level going in was definitely helpful. And then I'll let Vika sort of speak on it, but we actually sort of, when you look at the totality of like 17 people on set, we sort of also broke it down how we worked with different groups of actors in order to just get our days in, because we were always up against it.
Well, when it came down to the cinematography, and as I was watching, and I watched the film more than once, were handheld cameras used in some of the scenes?
Absolutely. It was basically the only way to do it on the schedule that we had. And we were working with the great DP, Lorena Pages. I think I'm not butchering her surname. It's a Spanish surname. And she was amazing in basically developing a handheld technique that would allow for really dynamic camera work whilst also an efficient shooting style. Because, by God, in 4 days, 25 pages we needed. That was the only way to do it. And that's what we did.
Well, I think the movement of the handheld cameras worked to the benefit of this film as well as the storylines, because you have so many people, you have so many conversations going on. So it's like you're taking the audience walking through a housewarming party, and there's so much going on, and it flowed extremely well. And
well, thank you for saying that. I just want to give credit to a few other heads of department that contributed, I think, to that feeling. So the first one being our editor, Monica Radwanska, who really brought this together and created that dynamism. And she pushed for cutting a scene, which we eventually did in order to bring the pacing up to scratch, as you're saying. But also Roland Heap, who was a re-recording mixer, who did a great deal. Him and his company did amazing work on the sound, because you can imagine, you need to be able to hear the dialogue, and yet you need the cacophony. So finding that balance, making the dialogue really clear whilst creating, an incredible layered sound design for the film. That is also, I would give credit to him for achieving that.
You bring up something that I'm going to have to go back and watch the film again, because I didn't realize it. Because when you have that many people, and your whole concept is, here's this housewarming party going on. And of course, we all know that if we've ever been to a party, there are 100 conversations going on at the exact same time. So to capture that ambiance and that nuance in this film, the audio here is extremely important to focus on the one or two, maybe three actors that are having their scene, while everybody around is either pretending to have conversation and not getting an audio bleed through. So yeah, it worked.
Thank you. And I guess another person to mention whose work I think contributed to that satisfying feeling of pacing and flow was Cora Miron, our composer, who composed on top of all the licensed tracks, because music is another big element that was difficult for this film. But we have obviously a number of licensed tracks, but also the score, which she composed in a very organic way with this group of musicians who kind of co-composed with her, and they did a two-screen. It was sax, it was drums, and it really gave the film, I think, that sense of pacing that it needed.
Yeah, and one of the biggest pet peeves of mine when it comes to short films is having correct pacing. Even though the films are short, the audience does not like to be caught in a slow, boring segment. So with short films, when I see them, I want to make sure that my attention is kept from beginning to end and that there's not a lull. But because of this is a party situation, I don't think there was really a worry with this type of storyline. So I love the fast pacing of this film. I mean, the moment the first scene comes into view, you're already paying attention. Because there's this bit of this intense conversation going on, and the audience is like, okay, what is going on right here? Because it starts to set the tone for the rest of the film. I also noticed that you had multiple storylines within this short film. 6 from what I counted. There was like marriage, maybe adultery, who fathered the child, self-awareness, and one person. And this is where I really caught it the second time I watched it. The one person who is actually truthful without the use of the truth serum. How challenging was it dealing with multiple storylines in a short film?
Do you know what? We really struggled with this on script level, and because we knew we only had 4 days to shoot because of the budget and time constraints and availabilities, we thought, well, wouldn't it be a good idea to simplify this at script level? My God, we really tried, but what we felt ultimately was that you needed the 6 storylines in order to explore the full theme of the film, which is people's different relationship to truth. So certainly that character that you mentioned, Benji, played by Danny Ashok, it was really important to have his character, who did have a kind of less of a persona and more of a, I think, just straightforward relationship to truth. And for him, the serum, it was a blessing, because suddenly, he was himself, and there was nothing in the way. Whilst someone like the Richard Gadd character, Jimmy, who, had so much persona and so much resistance to facing his own truth, for him, of course, led to kind of the unraveling of his personality. And we wanted to capture that range of reactions. That was really important to us.
Yeah, one of the scenes, the second time I caught this. So when I was watching it a second time, I noticed that when Benji showed up very early to the housewarming party, it was his lines that really got to me, because I'm like, okay, he's just honest. He just says whatever comes out of his mouth. It's the truth. He's not being smart aleck. He's not being rude. It's just his character. But as you watch his character throughout the film, you start seeing, oh, he didn't indulge. He never even came near the truth serum. That's just his personality. But it really brought, I guess, a softness to the storyline, because now you get to see people who were forced telling the truth. And then you have someone who sees truth, talks truth. He doesn't, and it's just his character. So he really tied this whole thing together.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because what was funny was that Danny, when he read the script and we had our first chat, said, "Oh my God, I am this person." And we were like, "That's why we cast you." It felt such a natural fit for him, because he does have, I mean, Tim, maybe you can speak to this because you know him really well, don't you?
Well, I'll tell you that what I typically do when casting is I will go through, and I've watched everything, like just as a habit. I'll watch everything and anything I can get, and then I'll create a clip package, just pulling the best bits that show sort of different tonalities, sort of range of ability, and what I think their strengths are. And the strange thing with Danny is what I think really sold Vika was, I remember I was showing lots of clips of him being interviewed. So essentially we're seeing the real Danny. We're not seeing him act a part. And I'm saying, I think he can bring himself to the foreground of the role, which is exactly what he did. And I think, as you said quite well, I think that he ties it all together, but in a very unassuming way, which is what I think ultimately makes him a likable character, even though he's a super awkward one. And I'm not talking out of school when I say that, on the set, he was very shy, very sort of definitely the least talkative, would just sort of be off in his own corner doing his own thing. But then the moment you call action, he's on it. He's lit up, and just so entertaining to watch.
Well, okay, let me ask you this question, Timothy. Being a casting director, how interesting is it to watch? And this is a perfect scenario. This is a perfect film. You have multiple characters. How interesting was it for you to watch each of the actors prepare for their roles, and when they were not in a scene, what were they doing?
Oh, the read through was incredible. Just because, we'd beaten the odds against the pandemic. As I said, we lost, multiple people had dropped out. We had one less than 24 hours before the read. So just the miracle that we'd pulled it off, and that through a lot of begging on the phone, very last minute, managed to get contracts signed. That they were there was incredible. And actually at that read, once we had gone through the script a couple of times, we paired everybody off. And so Vika would go off in one room, speak to two of the actors. I would be off in one room speaking to two of the actors. Ollie would be doing the same. So it was a way of all of us getting to workshop the scenes for them to get to know their characters and how that character would interact with everyone else in the cast, but for us to get to know them personally as well and sort of see how they worked. And it meant that, when Vika is managing all these various different departments, because all three of us have worked with the actors, if she needs sort of additional help or some notes or just ideas of where we might want to push it, we can all chime in.
So well, Vika, just to add to that, just to add to that, in the end, we had to, a lot of the background work. So, our supporting cast, that was all Tim and Ollie. They were actually doing that kind of job of the second and third ADs and directing those actors in the background, because what was really important to us was to have this believable sense of background as well as foreground, because, as you said, the party is everywhere. It's a 360-degree situation, and it was quite complex to coordinate that. We definitely needed their brains to achieve that.
Well, Vika made a point. Yeah, we definitely made a point. Sorry.
No. Go ahead, Timothy.
We definitely made a point of a couple of the actors who were in the quote unquote background would say, "Oh, I'm an extra." And I would shut that down right away. I would say, "No, you're not an extra. You're a supporting player. You're part of the ensemble. that's what is going to make this. You're bringing a specificity, a certain kind of weirdness. The weirdness with the ensemble only works if we have the right reactions. So it was working on all of that. And I feel that, our lead actors could see that these people had sort of put the time and the forethought into it. So, it's almost like a live concert scenario. You had the main actors as sort of the band and the supporting players as the audience. And then when you bring them together in the same room, they're feeding off each other. And it was really interesting to see Richard in his big meltdown scene. You could see it from standing behind the camera that he was really, that was feeding his performance, was these reactions that he had no idea of what they were going to do, how they were going to react. He was just told what to do, and the others were told separately, their bits of business to be getting on with as this was sort of exploding all around them.
Well, Vika, what are the advantages of having an in-house casting director like Timothy?
Oh, so many. I highly recommend that. I mean, obviously we're making shorts, but we're also on our way to making feature films. And I think the model, kind of our strategy as a company, is to get in on the ground floor with a lot of talent that no one's ever heard of, but that in 1, 2, 3 years' time, everyone would have heard of. And I think in terms of stalking abilities, Tim and I make a good team in identifying these individuals and, getting to them and basically working on them with projects that they can commit to and, perhaps bringing them onto longer form projects later. But Tim has an encyclopedic knowledge of, film actors. As he said, he goes to the theater all the time. I don't have this knowledge. So without him, I think we would be quite stuck.
Well, although I feel like I'm dragging you to more and more productions now. So like that, I think part of our process, if Vika doesn't go, Ollie goes with me. And it's like you have, because I feel like it's like when I was talking about the casting of Danny, I almost want them to see, if not the real person. I think it really adds a different dimension when you see the actor, in the flesh or up close from the third row. It can just give you a different sort of way in, a different access point to how that might work in whatever the story and the setup of a particular project is. So I feel that's important.
Yeah, because from being having a film journalist background, and just like Vika just said, you have a full-blown encyclopedia of seeing so many actors. You know what they're capable of. And so it really feeds in to you really becoming a top casting director.
Well, steady on there, Ward. I think
take the compliment.
It's going to happen.
If not a top casting director, you mentioned in your intro, I have a disability. I have cerebral palsy. I think that's something that is not only exciting but important to me, in that I'm starting to see more disability visibility on screen and on the stage, and I'd like to see that more behind the camera as well. So however this progresses, and hopefully that is the goal, that we move on to a feature film, and we have other shorts in development, but just to put some visibility on that would mean the world to me in the long run.
Well, I've had the absolute privilege to interview directors and others anywhere from being autistic, neurodivergent, bipolar split personality, the list goes on. And everyone on this planet has the ability to give something to mankind and to bless mankind with whatever is within them, regardless of the disability. And I have been blessed so much by sitting down and talking and interviewing some of these people that I've learned so much. And it all comes down, we're really, we're all the same. We may have little things that are different, but everybody has a dream. And when it comes to filmmaking, every single one of them has a vision.
Amen.
Yeah, amen to that. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, And there was another thing about your film, Truth Serum, that I absolutely, truly appreciated. Because one of the elements of the Truth Serum created more self-awareness in some of the characters' questionable behavior, especially Richard Gadd's character. And his is the perfect example. I was glad that this film was not just another Liar Liar that starred Jim Carrey. Yeah, that was funny, but I like the way you brought truth out. I guess in a more maybe a real life scenario.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think what's funny is even in kind of or my approach to comedy, I'm always striving for realism first and foremost. By that I mean psychological realism. A lot of my films are very surreal, but I think at the core of that is always the reality of the situation and a kind of realism to the performance. So yeah, in that sense, we were very much striving to capture a truth, of the slice of life that we know, and to tell that story truthfully. That's always something I aspire to in filmmaking.
Well,
And I,
Vika, for you as a director, how much, because there's so much going on in this film, what was um, your process of being a director with so many members in a cast?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I was 7 months pregnant when I directed this film. And one great thing about that, aside from the maybe some of the drawbacks you can imagine, was that no one argues with a pregnant woman. So in that sense, it was very easy to deal with everyone, and yeah, I do it. I think I'd do it again just from that point of view. But I think my struggle was just to make sure that every actor on that set felt seen and supported, and that that primary audience that the director constitutes in film. That in theater, there would be so much energy coming from an audience, but in film, it's just you. You're watching the monitor, and the actor needs to feel seen and held and safe. So for me, what I was worried about, I think, was making sure that each member of the cast felt that and could give their best performance. And because of the strains of the schedule and just like the numbers in the cast, as you're saying, that was tough. But I think ultimately I'm still friends with everyone who's on that cast. So I think it was a good experience for the actors, which I'm really glad about.
Well, Timothy, as you are also a producer on this film, were there any producer challenges?
well, there's two producers because there's Frankie Fogg, who she was on set
Four
and sort of,
producers, Tim. Four producers.
sorry,
That's
or I
right.
should say two of us. Sorry, two of us were on set. But Frankie was more of the production producer. I was coming at it from more of the developmental stage. So coming in and sort of workshopping the script and getting it ready for when we went out to casting. So it was more on a story level, and then on set, as Vika was saying, it was working with the actors again, but working with that second troupe, if you like.
How big was funding? Let me say, how big of a challenge was funding for this film?
It was very challenging. And, in the UK, increasingly they're crunching all the film funding, including the short film funding. So at the time, we had applied to the BFI Network Short Film Fund, which still exists. And the response we got was that this film was too ambitious, which is true. It was ambitious, but we were basically rejected partly, I think, on that basis, or at least that's the feedback we received. So it was very hard to get it financed, and it did need, it wasn't the most expensive film we've ever done, but in order to ensure a realistic schedule, albeit one that was very thinly stretched, we did need a fair amount of budget. So yeah, in the end, it was quite tough to get that money because we were not supported in this case by public funders, but hopefully in the future we will be, based on our track record now.
I like ambition. We need more ambitious filmmakers to really step outside of the box. And of course, that's the beauty of a short film. A lot of people are able to step out of the box. They're able to test certain storylines and concepts. So I say be as ambitious if you want to be when it comes to the short film. But I'm not going to give the ending of this film away. But
Oh, please.
no, I love the ending because as I'm following the story along, I'm like, okay, and because there's that one scene, and I'm like, oh, where is this going to go? Because this is like, out of all the truth serum uh, effects of all the characters, there was just one that was like, oh my gosh, this one is dangerous. So I'm not going to give the ending away, but I loved how, with this short film, how the storyline came together. I love the bit of surprise ending because of that perfect face to face moment. And it just worked. And what you left me with was, I want more.
Well, look no further. We have a feature film that is currently in development that certainly captures a similar tone to what Truth Serum did, because we work in this kind of dark comedy drama space, and we intend to make bigger and bolder projects with that. So whilst there was a suggestion, I think, actually by some of the cast that this could be turned into a TV show, I think, in fact, we are looking to make a debut feature all together as a team, and so that will be hopefully our next project. I think you'll hear from us
Well,
again.
that was a question that I had because I can see it as a feature film. I think that I would love to see it as a streaming series or a television series because you can just run so freely with the storylines.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? If someone will give us money, we would love to develop that. But more imminently, you can watch the short on Omeletto next. It's going to start streaming next Monday, June 17th. And so, you can fully immerse yourself in the world then. This is to
What
all the audience members who might be interested.
did you submit this film at all to any film festivals?
Do you know what we did? And we did not have the festival run that we hoped for. And I'm going to attribute this to the running time of the film. The film is 21 minutes long. And as you know, I'm sure you've other filmmakers have spoken to this point. It's very hard for programmers to program films which are over 15 minutes long, or indeed over 10 minutes long. So I think we did ourselves, in some ways, we sort of painted ourselves slightly into a corner with festivals by allowing that length. However, as you pointed out, it does kind of need that length in order to get at all the storylines and have it all come together at the end. So whilst we certainly strive to cut it down in the edit, we ultimately decided that it needed that scope and that perhaps the audience for this film is more online, hopefully.
Yeah, I've seen the average time for a short film is usually 14 to 16 minutes.
Hmm.
So far this season, this is really funny. I've seen a 5 minute, a 7, and a 12, and they are
Hmm.
so stellar that it makes you beg for more. And the
Hmm.
great thing I've seen this season is that there's more comedies, which is why I love Truth Serum. So, a question for both of you. If there was a magical truth serum, what do you think the real life consequences would be in the real world?
Tim, do you want to go first?
So you're saying if people in general started ingesting this?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I feel like just think about it, apply it to our current political situation. Just imagine the fallout. We're on the precipice of so many breaking points already. Especially in this country, the sort of unveiled contempt that the Conservative Party seem to have for the people they're supposed to be representing. When you look at certain politicians, you can see it on their face. We'd simply be hearing it out loud. It would,
Yeah.
it would be bringing out what we already know, what we can see. It's barely, very thinly veiled contempt.
Yeah. I don't think the public needs the truth serum. I think the politicians need the truth serum.
Oh, they certainly do. But you know
Yes.
what? For the public in a therapeutic setting, I think it could do wonders. Look at psychedelic therapy that's gaining traction now across the world. That is a form of truth serum. That is a form of confrontation with the self. So I think if it was contained, to a professional therapeutic setting, then I think actually it could do wonders in terms of overcoming, our alienation from the truth, which, causes so much suffering.
Yeah. I know people who have done the ayahuasca therapy
Hmm.
almost basically the herbal LSD, and taking trips. And from what some of my friends who have done it told me, it's extremely enlightening.
I would love to see that sort of enlightenment play out in the workplace. I think in terms of real life, when I'm thinking about how that might happen in my day job, that could be a lot of fun, but also a complete disaster.
Yeah, it is. But see, on my side of things, one of the things that I've absolutely loved, love, and embrace is talking to people from all over the world, from different economic standings, different educational backgrounds. There are filmmakers who have gone to film school. There are filmmakers who have never been to film school. But to learn their backgrounds, to learn where they came from, the countries that they were born and raised in, and the countries that they've escaped to find a better life. And just to learn by listening what others have experienced, I'm like, the greatest thing about the film industry is we're never going to run out of stories.
Oh my God. Well, especially now that the pool of filmmakers is so much wider and we are telling and actively embracing more diverse stories. Yeah, there are a lot of stories and a lot of forms of narrative, which we haven't even explored yet. It's a very interesting time.
Very much so. Now, what projects are y'all currently working on now that Truth Serum is making its rounds around the world here?
So we have one short which is going hopefully into production in the fall, and that is the story. It's a story about soup and identity politics. It's a story about borscht, if you know this East European beetroot red soup that's usually eaten with a dollop of sour cream and some dill. That one. So we have a story about an East European woman with quite a mixed background. Her ancestry comes from Ukraine, comes from Russia. They're Jewish, they're Moldovan, all over the place, just like me. And she's trying to cook a borscht according to her Russian Jewish grandmother's recipe. But of course, soon after starting, her Ukrainian grandfather pops out the soup to try and challenge whether she has the right to use that recipe and is it the best recipe. And the rest of her ancestors soon come out of the woodwork too. And ultimately, they all end up in a borscht that's turning redder as more blood is spilled. So it's a story that is somewhat allegorical of the present situation. And I found it both absurd and tragic. That yes, the borscht in reality has become a bone of contention between Russia and Ukraine, certainly, even though it's kind of a soup that is very native to the whole of the old Eastern Bloc. So that's our imminently next project. Tim is casting that project as we speak.
And I just want to try and sell that in one line. If it sounds very heavy and very heady and is both of those things, it's also a movie in which you're going to see an elderly woman clinging to a giant piece of potato. For her life as she's sort of being billowed about in this soup. So I'm really looking forward to the intergenerational challenges of that. It's a very different proposition to Truth Serum. All that movie skews all within sort of a similar age bracket. So this is going to be very challenging in terms of ethnicity and sort of age range.
I like that. I can't wait to see it when you get it done. You have to come back so we can talk about it.
Thank you. We would.
And if you get Truth Serum going, I know you're working on a possible feature film, but if you create this as a series, I'm all in.
Well, amen to that, and we shall certainly try.
Yeah, you'll be invited to that party for sure.
Oh, well, ladies and gentlemen, I have seen some great films already this year. More comedies are coming out. Thank the Lord for that, because we need to laugh. But you have got to see Truth Serum. It's going to be available June 17th on Omeletto. Just go to YouTube, look up Omeletto. My gosh, you could find every short film you could almost even imagine has ever been created. Truth Serum is going to debut there. Take the 21 minutes and sit down. Hey, you can grab coffee, a Coke, and popcorn, and you're going to enjoy Truth Serum just like I did. Now, I've watched it more than once because it's that good. It's that great of a short film. And Vika and Timothy, this film should have been allowed more time at the film festivals because it deserves to be there. And when I see this, everything about this film is great. And Timothy, you nailed the casting. You nailed the casting on this one. The script is fantastic. The story, the multiple storylines, and I love the fact, Vika, that you were ambitious enough to go for it, regardless what the BFI says. so we need more filmmakers like you. And again, ladies and gentlemen, the whole world can enjoy this film, Truth Serum. It's released on June 17th on Omeletto channel on YouTube. And I want to thank you, Vika and Timothy, for coming onto the show to share this great film with us all.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having us. We'll really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a really delightful conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching it more than once. Like that's great. That's great. Like that makes me feel really good. Multiple watches.
I tell all the filmmakers, I always watch the films 2 to 3 times because I'm trying to get the understanding. You know, there are films out there that can be very deep, very dramatic, can be dark, and sometimes you got to sit there and you got to hit pause and just kind of look at the scene, try to soak it in, try to see what the vision of the filmmaker is, what the message they're trying to tell. And so it's my job to take as much time as I can to watch every film, but I am thankful for a season of more comedies because though last year there were so many amazing films, but everybody leaned more towards the dramatic, deep, dark side. This year is a breath of fresh air of laughter and love with some of these, but this is a stellar film, ladies and gentlemen, and you have the opportunity within the next few days to see this on Omeletto. So look up Truth Serum, the best 21 minutes you'll ever spend in your entire life, because we need more films like this one, and I can't wait for more from Vika and Timothy and your production company, because I know that you are going to be doing many, many great things, and I mean that sincerely and honestly and genuinely, because you've got the talent. I've already seen it. So the only direction from here is up, and you're already there.
We really appreciate the vote of confidence, truly. Thank you.
Yeah, it made us feel really good coming up on release day. So yeah, I hope everybody is even 5% as enthusiastic as you've been tonight.
Well, we're going to be doing some heavy promotion for this interview, and then we'll even add in the link so that way people will go straight to the film and enjoy it as much as I did. And again, thank you to both of you for stopping by and sharing this amazing film. And ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the replays of our interviews with top film directors, producers and screenwriters and actors, even casting directors, on Bon Cinema. So we are available on YouTube and a dozen audio platforms such as iTunes and Spotify. So please subscribe. And I want to thank you for watching and listening. And as for me, I'll either see you at the movies or from the red carpet.
I thought I recognized the smell of fast food and cheap cologne. Oh. Pass that over.
How can I say no to curves like that? Want to go for a ride? My motor's out front.
Sorry. We already fucked.
You should be the one at a piece of this. Can't remember every notch on the bedpost, can I? Ain't that right? Here, catch.
It was so memorable because it was so spectacularly short.
That's... Take a breath. She's joking, cheap. Yeah, I'm taking some drugs in my time. I'm amazing. This is like... I mean, what's
Look at me.
Do I need to go in here?
Look at me. It's all right. You just overdid it. Look at me, huh?
Let's get a drink. I mean, we don't talk anymore, do we? You know, like, really talk. Just the lads.
It seems like you have a lot going on for you right now. Maybe we should go somewhere quieter.